Okay, hello and welcome again to a new episode of the KewCast. I'm John and joined again by my good pal Eddie.
Hey, John.
How's it going, buddy?
Good. Sorry, just trying to pull up the notes. I lost them.
Hey, you know, we're on a strict time schedule because you have a full-time job outside of your podcasting.
I've got a life.
You've got a life. And so we need to get going so you can go to a work meeting, a real work meeting. But Eddie, we've got a good show today. We're going to cover kind of some latest news, including all of the paddle shakeup at the PPAs, where all the pros are playing with different paddles. And we did a little PPA pick'em this week with a bunch of other people, which was a ton of fun. We'll get into that.
I chose big time. There were a lot of upsets, man.
There were a lot of upsets.
I got a lot of upset.
It worked out well for me, though.
Yeah, it did.
We've got a lot of paddles to talk about, and as usual, we'll do a little deep dive. And we're actually going to do the ball analysis today that kills us. We've been kicking that can down the road for 3 weeks now. And Q&A.
Awesome sauce.
Let's do it. So jumping in to the kind of the paddle shakeup at the PPA this weekend. We covered this last week. You know, I think we recorded on Wednesday or Thursday last week, kind of late, and published on Friday. So we kind of were up to date on things that were going to happen at the PPA. But the new UPAA rules, the full certification program, went into effect September 1. And that's, ended up coinciding with the PPA Cincinnati event. So pros were having to play with paddles that they're not typically playing with in several cases. Now, all of these companies had, I think, prior warning to, these rule changes. I know they did. I don't know, what exactly caused some companies to not have their paddles certified on September 1st, whether or not that was miscommunication or whatnot. It's all speculation. I don't know. Regardless, lots of players playing with different paddles. So I did see a tweet from Jason Aspis, the president of the UPAA, saying that of the 16 paddles and gold medal matches at PPA Cincinnati, this was the slam, by the way, so a very important tournament. Only Georgia Johnson's Franklin C45 Hybrid was played with in previous tournaments before the new UPAA certification went into effect on September 1. So he's saying all gold, all people competing for gold. Of those 16 people, only one was playing with their paddle they played with before. And that's because, for various reasons, there were slight adjustments made to, for example, Ben John's paddle and Anna Bright's paddle. They were both competing for gold. Apparently, I wasn't quite clear on this. So the 2,200 RPM threshold boundary came down to 2,100 on September 1st. I either knew that and forgot or just didn't know it. So those Yola paddles that were UPAA only approved had to reduce their grid a little bit, to meet that 2,100 RPM threshold. And then, the bunch of other companies outside of Yola, the big one like PIKKL, for example, neither Gabe nor Tyra could play with their typical paddles. So we saw them playing with different companies' paddles, some blacked out, some not. So did you notice
the statement about Georgia, is that model specific or her actual paddle?
Model specific, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it just like Franklin's, all of theirs are passed, and they just JW wasn't competing for gold. Georgia was. There was a clerical issue where it listed the final paddle list at UPAA did not list the C45, which Georgia plays with, but it actually was approved, so they corrected that. So all of the Franklins in both thicknesses, all of the C45s are approved. So none of the Franklin pros had to do anything different, but most of the other pros did. So
interesting, because you did mention this has been out there for a while. It's not like a day of surprise or even a week of surprise. So for so many to, I don't know, get caught behind the 8 ball seems strange.
Yeah, strange to me too. I'm sure that news will come out, why that in particular happened. And there's always going to be some, difficulties in meeting these kind of big deadlines, right? This is a pretty big shift. And the full certification includes direct spin testing, bumped down to 2,100 now, PEF, which is PB Core, as well as ABI, so accelerated break-in. So I imagine between the three of those, a lot of paddles kind of got caught up in this, new certification. So some notable sightings for pros playing with different paddles. I already mentioned that Ben Johns and Anna Bright were playing with the lower grit Pro 4s, but more or less the same paddle. ALW. Apparently all of the PaddleTech 12.7 millimeter, or most of them, we don't know for sure, but I suspect that they failed the PEF 0.385 limit. So none of those could be played. So we saw Annalie Waters playing with different paddles throughout the tournament in Cincinnati. She started off with one that didn't have her signature on it, which I suspect is the new 13 millimeter version of the Bantam series, which includes ALWC and a TKO, CX, all of these. So apparently just increasing this core thickness by 0.3 millimeters is probably allowing these paddles to pass. I think she was playing with that originally, and if you saw her in Championship Sunday, she was actually playing with the earlier version of the ALWC with the smaller handle and the little nipple on the end cap, like the really old school looking one. I don't know why I don't know if that one's now approved as 12.7. I don't know. It was kind of chaos, and all of these pros playing with different paddles. Gabe was also playing with the ALWC. Did you notice that?
I did not see that. So from the PIKKL.
Yeah, Gabe Tardio. He had a signature Annalie Waters paddle.
Okay.
But he's playing great with it. That surprised me. I thought he'd choose a control paddle, but I think it was the 14.3, which is a little more control oriented.
Still, that's a shift.
Very poppy paddle. Yeah, and it's a different shape. He plays an elongated control paddle. He went to a wide body power paddle. It's like the opposite end of the spectrum, But he played great with it, and who knows, maybe he's now a convert to power paddles. Maybe PIKKL will be providing a power paddle. I know they're working on a bunch of cool stuff, which I'm excited to see come out eventually. We saw Tyra Black playing with a blacked out Franklin. I saw Franklin on there. I think it was
hybrid,
the Dynasty shape. So funny. Gabe went to a wide body. Tyra went to elongated. The opposite of their respective paddles. It might have been one of their original Tour dynasties. The Gen 2s instead of the.
Oh man.
Yeah.
If you can make that work,
right.
You must be a pro.
Tyra can do anything with any paddle. CJ Klinger. So Proton Flamingos were out. So right. CJ Klinger was playing with a blacked out paddle, and I saw on Discord, I don't know if this is a rumor, I don't know if it's true, but apparently both CJ Klinger and Chris Hayworth were playing with Luz paddles. Yeah.
That's
making waves. All of a sudden, Luz is like
2 weeks, they've gone from 0 to 100.
Right. All over the news.
Such a good paddle.
Yeah, 2 good paddles out, and they're sending us a third model.
Was that the Inferno?
No. So we did the Inferno last week. This is like, I forget the name of it. I think it's another all-foam paddle.
Okay.
We'll see. Andre can't play with this Flamingo, so he was playing with the Perseus 4 originally, and then he switched to the Magnus shape, which is closer to his Magnus 3S, right? Yeah, total nuts. And then both Kawamotos, the sisters that did amazing. So many upsets. They were playing with the Yola Pro 4s.
What was their prior paddle?
They're Proton pros. So they're playing with Flamingos. So
maybe not anymore.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. So after all these upsets and like the Kawamoto's rising to stardom and the big winner in the PPA Cincinnati was Yola. Right. They were there to provide paddles to all these pros that couldn't play with their original brand paddles.
Can we talk about those Kawamotos for a while?
Oh, let's do. Oh my God.
I was thinking we should rename them Granite and Quartz because they counter like
stone walls over there.
It's nuts,
and
man.
Now they have offense too. Like I've loved seeing their evolution, and I really hope that this wasn't a one-off and they just happen to be playing out of their minds on this tournament. I don't think it's going to be, but there's always a risk. But we've seen them evolve from probably the most defensive players on the tour, with the biggest defensive skills, being able to reset. They've been working on that honing that skill for like 2 years. And, that side of their game was best of the best, but you have to have some offense too. And they've added that offense over the past, I want to say like 6 months. And now they're like at one point, it was Jackie just bagged Annalie Waters in the semifinals, like clean body bag.
I saw a couple actually.
Right. And Annalie Waters was like, who are these people? That's what I do. It's like, it can't happen to me.
Honestly, I had not kept up with them. I hadn't watched them for probably, 6 to 8 months, like you said. And their game has completely transformed. There are so many shots that they attack that they would have reset or countered in the past, especially in transition.
Oh, yeah.
They were attacking the crap out of balls.
Yeah, just those
so
whippy
good
shots. Yeah. I mean, anything above hip level was attacked, and they could fall back on that incredible defensive capabilities they have.
And there's a Jackie on the left side. She was going down the line on Anna Bright so many times and just setting up high balls coming back and just putting those away. It was just so good to see.
It's just the perfect storm because they have the righty-lefty combo, so 2 forehands in the middle. They've both raised their offensive capabilities. They both are rock solid defensively. And both the semifinals were the upset ALW and Anna Bright, and the finals were the upset Tyra and Georgia. It was so close the entire time, and they played so clutch when they needed to, and there were long segments of both of those matches where they just didn't miss anything. Nothing was missed.
The middle was completely shut down. I mean, you got 2 forehands in the middle, and they just did such a good job of just taking that out of play.
Yeah.
Such good pickleball.
That was a fantastic.
On both sides of the net, such good pickleball.
For sure.
And I love their just demeanor on the court. They don't have to scream on every opponent shot that goes in the net. They don't have to do all that. They don't get a lot of, that emotional just overage.
Right.
It's just go out there and do your business.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. I mean, I love seeing the different personality types, and I think there's definitely a place for this more kind of subdued, humble personality types. Like the final point, it was really kind of heartwarming when they were up match point against Annalie Waters and Anna Bright, and they both just turned to each other and kind of smiled and like, time to, we've got to do it right now. Or they actually mentioned that in the interview. They're like, if we don't do it right now, we're going to lose. So
and I think they drove it right at Annalie, and she knocks it out of bounds, right?
Yeah.
So
incredible.
Very fitting.
So overall, great tournament, and we got to. So Brett Mack from the PPA reached out to us and asked if we wanted to be part of a pick'em. So basically, fantasy pickleball. We choose from the quarterfinals up to the finals who we think's going to win each pairing, right? Each matchup, and so he got you and I in on it. Other people involved were Pickleball Studios, so Chris and his brother Isaac. Lewis and Justin from the Pickleball Pursuit podcast and Pickleball Etc. Jimmy Miller from King of the Court, the Pickleball Effect gang, all 3 of them. So Braden, Aaron, and Kyle. There were some others like Marcus was in there, Samson was in there, Jared Paul from the kitchen, Dana from All Things Pickleball, Caleb from the kitchen, and Angel Morales from P3, a pickleball manufacturing company. So yeah, I thought this was a ton of fun, and I would love to keep doing this because it really kept me engaged. Like there's a whole new level of like watching.
That's true.
Now,
for sure,
throughout the tournament because you want your people to win, right? And we all did our picks. Yeah. What do you think about it, Eddie?
Whenever I do these things, I don't necessarily go with the highest odds. I kind of go with my personal favorites for a particular match. So that doesn't really work out as a strategy.
I don't know.
Although in this one, depending on where you went, there were some upsets along the way that could have really helped you out.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, nobody had the Kawamotos winning anything, right? So if they would have instantly won, basically, because
You did all right based on that kind of upset formula.
Yeah. So I did kind of who I thought was going to win, and mostly it was throughout quarters all the way to finals. Mostly it was, the usual suspects. I had Annalie Waters and Anna Bright winning finals. They ended up not. I had Ben and Gabe winning, but in there, my main, kind of dark horse, when it went against the grain was Chris Hayworth because he just recently came over to PPA from APP, and he's ranked now in the PPA down super low, like 56 or something. He was. And I knew he's way better than that. And most people did. But I was like, I'm going to take a gamble on Chris. I think he's going to beat Fed Staksrud in singles in the quarterfinals. And sure enough, he did it. And I had Chris going all the way to the finals and then losing to Hunter Johnson in the finals. And that didn't end up. It was really hard for me to choose Chris over Connor Garnett in the semifinals. That's who he ended up losing to, because big fan of Connor also. But I was like, if I'm going to choose Chris to beat Fed, I might as well put him in the finals. And then I don't think the matchup with Hunter is the greatest for Chris, because Hunter's got probably the best drives from the baseline out of any pro, and that's also Chris's strength. So that's why I put him, going down to Hunter in the finals. But regardless, that didn't work out. But that gave me a big boost in the quarterfinals, and then a lot of my other choices ended up going, and I ended up winning the whole, out of 15 of us or whatever, the whole thing.
Awesome. What'd you get for that?
I don't know. I don't know. So Brett said that they're covering it on some show. I don't know what show. I don't know when it's coming out, but I think also he's looking for a sponsor for some kind of prize for this. I think it's going to be an ongoing thing.
What do you think about doing it as a show that you and I kind of put our heads together and come up with our collective picks versus the other shows?
I like it. Yeah. I'm sure that if you look at the total points, because you came in like third to last,
Yeah.
And I feel bad for Pickleball Effect, because both Aaron and Kyle, somehow their picks for the mixed doubles and women's doubles didn't go through.
Right.
So they were on the bottom too, because they didn't basically choose anything. So that puts like Pickleball Effect way down there. And Braden was like, cumulatively, I think, if you consider Justin and Lewis the same entity, Pickleball Pursuit, which technically they're not, then they come in slightly above our cumulative score.
Okay.
And then we're slightly above Pickleball Studio. But yeah, that might be a thing moving forward, podcasts,
I like
groups
it.
of people. That was a ton of fun though. So thanks to Brett from PPA for setting it up and organizing it. There was a big, I don't think you were in on that collective text thread. Where
I was, but I when it came out, I had no idea what it was about.
Okay.
And so it wasn't until the email came out after that
Okay.
I started paying attention.
I think you got booted off because we were just all texting and there's a lot of trash talking during the tournament.
That's the good part.
Yeah. So good times. All right. Yeah. Anyway, to wrap up the PPA tournament, fantastic tournament, lots of upsets. Other notable matches in there were in the men's semifinals. If you want to watch like one or two matches, watch the clear ones where the Kawamotos are beating up on people. Also, the men's semifinals between Fed and Hayden versus Andre and Christian. First two games, some of the best pickleball I've ever seen in my life. Just insane gets, just the most crazy firefights you've ever seen. Just like, how are they ever getting these back? And then the third game was like Andre and Christian just, turned it up. And unfortunately, for Hayden and Fed, they just couldn't keep up. So Andre and Christian went to the finals. Christian Alshon, dude, I mean, he won the singles men's, and that was totally off my radar. He's been kind of, he's hot and cold, but man, he was on. And when he's playing at his best, nobody's better than him in singles,
Do you think, John, the paddle shakeup had anything to do with the upsets that we saw over the weekend?
There's something to look into for sure. Andre in particular looked, especially with the Pro 4, he looked a little tentative, like he was not quite comfortable playing. Normally he's just set and he's Andre, he's 100% confident, but he just looked like he wasn't swinging through. I think it was a little more powerful, different shape than what he's used to. When he got onto the Magnus 3S, he seems a little closer to the Flamingo. But yeah, I mean, I think it's in your head. Tyra's playing with a completely different paddle, and she didn't play her, she's always rock solid. She played amazing, but that last couple of games in the finals, she wasn't the Tyra we're used to seeing. So I think there's an argument to be made that shakeup probably did affect the outcome.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the meat and potatoes of the podcast here, Eddie. Let's talk about some paddles.
Yeah, good week.
Yeah. Let's jump into the newest model and shape and revised graphics from Honolulu. Look at that pretty paddle.
I love what they did, man.
Yeah. So they changed the graphics. No longer I don't know if they're going to keep the traditional graphics on some of the models. I'm sure they will for the legacy models, but switched over to white accents, so on the handle and the edge guard, and then a really, kind of subdued, simple line graphics. I like the big lettering on the side, and then some white lettering, and then some black laser etching on there as well.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
I love the color combination. I love the subtle graphics. That little flat spot on top, I'm really digging that. There's a lot to like here.
Yeah. And it's a very functional shape as well. So this is the J6 FC Plus, so they're full foam paddle. So this is their floating core, EPP in the center with the EVA band around the exterior. And let's get into some of the specs here. One thing to start off with is this is still pending USAP approval, which they're expecting within the next 10 days. And this is the same construction as the ones that are already approved. They come in on the Q-Core estimates. The Q-Core score is, at the low end of the power category. I think, for USAP, it's right at the 0.43 limit. I'm not sure how, because these things don't play like the most powerful paddles on the market. I put them kind of medium power. Regardless, I think if the others passed, this one will have no problem passing. But just a caveat, it's not passed yet, so no, we will see. And I don't think they're selling them yet either. So again, the same build as the FC series before them. Same price, so $175.50 after code. I think they did great for this shape. First of all, it looks good. Long handle, elongated, but the dimensions on this are ideal, in my opinion, for an elongated paddle. So we've got I measured it. Using my own measurements, it's 16.46 inches long, so just under that 16.5 elongated standard, by 7.52 inches wide. So they went a little bit shorter, a little bit wider, which I think is smart, because if you look at the swing weight, it's 119, which is very respectable for an elongated. Twist weight is 6.5, which is big for a elongated paddle. Elongated paddles usually fall in the upper fives to lower sixes. This is mid six, right in the middle of the 6 twist weight. And the handle is long at 5.75 inches. I like what they did with the taper too. So it's not the narrow taper, narrow neck that decreases twist weight. They've made the handle long enough for comfortable two hands on this. And by the way, the handle feels great too. And they've broadened the neck so that you add that twist weight and lateral stability and forgiveness to this. Yeah. And we hit with it yesterday. What'd you think, Eddie?
I'm loving the way this thing hits. It's, it's not going to blow anybody away by power or spin, but it's got a level of feel and forgiveness that just makes it a really nice all-around paddle, especially for an elongated. There are aspects of this in terms of sweet spot that you don't see in a lot of elongated paddles.
Yeah, totally agree. Like completely stock, no weight added. I could play with this for sure. We did add it. Played around with 3 grams on each side. And, I started down a little lower. You raised it there. I agree. That's where I like it. This is where it kind of feels best right now. We haven't experimented too much, but suffice it to say, you could pull this out of the box, run out to the court, hit it, and it's going to hit just fine. It plays great. It's very much in line with the previous FC Plus models and the notch foam paddles. They all play very similarly. So, it's not going to play very differently from the J2 shape, except it's elongated. So if you're an elongated fan, this fills a gap in what they had for sure. They did have what was their previous arrow curve top elongated shape, J7, I think. So that was an option. But for those of you that like the more rectangular square shape, Perseus-inspired shape, then this is good stuff.
What do you think of that flat top that we've seen now on the boomstick and now on this?
Yeah, I wonder, I like it. It looks good. I think it's just an aesthetic thing. I don't know why it's happening. I assume they're made in the same factory, the Honolulus and the the Selkirks. But yeah, I think it's fine. What do you think about it?
I like it a lot. I think it looks great, but also functionally, I think that a more traditional arrow curve top would increase the length of the paddle in a non-functional way.
Yeah.
Whereas this, I think, gives you just a little bit broader sweet spot, particularly on the north section of the paddle.
Yeah, those top corners are.
Yeah, exactly.
The sweet spot is growing out to match that shape of the paddle. Okay, we also got a teaser from Jam, the owner of Honolulu, that there are 3 final prototypes for a new power version of a new power model coming out. So this, apparently it's going to be more powerful than these, and I think it will be, it'll be called the J6CR, and I asked him what CR means, and he said COR reactor is what it means. So I don't know if that means coefficient of restitution. That's the kind of COR it must be, reactor. So be excited to see. So they will be coming. The prototypes are coming soon. I imagine that, things move fast for Honolulu. I imagine by another month or so, we'll be seeing these hit the market. Anything else with the new Honolulu?
No, I think it's great that they're at least listening to us, maybe all of their customers and reviewers about branding and color choice and giving folks something different.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. We got a new Friday Fever shape.
Got the fever.
Yeah. So the, kind of the legendary by now budget option for a Gen 3 paddle coming in at $99, originally in the elongated shape, is now available in a Widebody shape.
Hey, before we get to that, can we go back to the Honolulu for a second?
Sure.
So their first shape versus this elongated shape, do you have a preference?
First shape being what?
That hybrid
J2?
shape.
The J2?
Yeah.
Good question. I like it. I actually prefer, after playing with this versus the J2, I would pick the J6.
I would too.
Yeah. Would you?
Yeah. I think it aligns better with just my play style, where I prefer to have the sweet spot on a paddle. On this one, it's a little bit north of the other.
Yeah.
So yeah, the J6.
I mean, the J2, I haven't had enough time with the long handle version to really say I like the J6 better. But if we're talking the original J2 shape with the shorter handle versus this new J6 shape, I'd go the new elongated J6.
Okay.
And, part of it is the fact that the dimensions of this are, I feel like, perfect for my taste for an elongated paddle. It's not the super long, super skinny one. It's the slightly shorter, slightly wider elongated version. And for all the perks of the twist weight and everything else, I feel like it fits my play style better. Yeah.
John, 2 weeks where we're in complete alignment.
We've got to find something to disagree on.
Let's disagree on the next one.
All right. Okay, so back to the Friday Fever Widebody. I went to get x-rays yesterday, but the place I do it was not available, so I was not able to get an x-ray. I did hear from the owner of Friday that they've done some different things. They made some iterative changes to this compared to the original elongated shape, and they will transfer those over to the elongated also. They said there's some kind of new internal weighting on this to give it a broader sweet spot. What else did he say? Anyway, I don't even have a x-ray of the original elongated. My impression was that, and I don't know if this is from just me guessing or I actually saw it on another podcast or review. I think the originals were like the Yola style horseshoe shape foam around the perimeter to give it that Gen 3 aspect. I don't think they're fully floating, but I could be wrong. I don't know if the foam parts of the new iteration are any different than the old, but we will find out. I'll x-ray both. But yeah, so really preliminary thoughts on this. I don't have all the data just yet, but you and I did get to hit with it yesterday. And yeah, what do you think of the play characteristics?
Man, Friday is just killing it lately. They've gone from budget, I'll even say cheap paddle in the case of this company, to just something that's very high quality, very playable. Whatever they're doing to sweet spot is working, because this one has a sizable sweet spot.
Yeah.
It's hard to miss.
True. I mean,
if you miss, it's you.
I mean, first of all, it's a nice looking wide body shape. It's very similar to the, the Hurricane shape from PIKKL and the new wide body from Selkirk. I think it's got the elongated handles, nice aesthetic curve on top, and I think this is kind of the ideal wide body shape. And the width obviously contributes to the wider sweet spot. I do feel that internal weighting, whatever they're doing internally, I feel like it eliminates the need for adding, for modifying it for most people. Probably, 85% of people won't need to add any weight to this, and they can play it stock, and it plays great out of the box. I do want to mess around with some perimeter weighting. For this, I'd probably put 3 grams at 9 and 3, or maybe even a little bit higher because now that I'm used to slightly longer paddles, where I hit the ball is closer to the top of this paddle. So shoring up some of the twisting or some of the narrow space up top, I think would be useful to try out. It would increase the swing weight. I don't have do I? Yeah, it's 114 swing weight.
It's very swingable.
Yeah, very swingable. Good paddle. It feels a little stiff, feels stiff as in most Gen 3 foam enhanced paddles. We are hitting it next to full foam paddles yesterday, so that's the first thing I noticed was kind of stiffer feel, stiffer Gen 3 feel, higher pitch. I feel like, these are going to break in like most Gen 3 paddles, which in some ways can be good. The question is, are they going to eventually break, or go out of spec? Don't know yet. But yeah, for $99, man, I think this is a very, very solid option and a really good addition to the Friday lineup.
Yeah, I was going to say we've been playing with so many Gen 4 all foam paddles lately, which are very deep throated, very boingy.
Yeah.
This one is stiff, very snappy. Some people prefer that, and if you do, this is a really fine option.
Yeah. That's a good point, Eddie, that a lot of people prefer to feel closer and more linked into the ball contact in the face, which you get with the stiffer feel versus the catch and release feel. And this there's something to be said for that, even for me. I generally prefer the plusher feel and the catch and release, but going back to some of these Gen 3 and even stiffer paddles, there's kind of a nice predictability in that ball paddle response that you get with these.
I think there is somewhat of a play advantage in a kind of a snappy, stiff paddle in the control aspect, because the return angle of the ball is going to be very predictable, because the ball comes off that face so fast.
Yeah, exactly.
Versus a high dwell time paddle.
Yeah.
And some people just get along better with a paddle like that.
I think a lot of pros do. I mean, look at Andre Daescu, who switched over to the Pro 4, which is not by any means a super soft paddle, but it is softer than the Proton Flamingo, and he went to the 3S as a compromise, which is a stiffer paddle. And I think a lot of pros prefer that what they're used to, what they're dialed into, and that stiffer feeling certainly has its perks. So yeah. What else? Firepower on this, I wouldn't say it's overpowered by any means. I'd put it, kind of right there in line with the Honolulu J6NF FC Plus series, kind of that low end of power. It has similar characteristics, I'd say, to like the Franklin C45s. I'd say that these are very similar firepower-wise, maybe slightly a notch above, starting off firepower-wise than the C45s. What are your thoughts on that?
I would go low power on the high end of this offering, maybe even like high on the all-court side.
Okay. What compared to the C45s, where would you put it?
Compared to the C45, equivalent.
Okay.
Firepower, yeah.
All right. I keep trying to bait you into disagreeing on something, but we can't get there today. All right. Shall we move on?
Let's go.
All right. I've had this paddle for a while, just haven't gotten around to talking about it because of the big July bonanza we had. So it's good to finally get back. So PIKKL sent us their newish Evo-01, so Evolution 01 paddle. And it is a Gen 3 foam enhanced paddle. I'll show the x-ray on the screen here. You can see that they have basically 2 horseshoes of foam. So one kind of similar to the Yola 3s and 4s, presumably EVA or softer foam around the perimeter. and then another horseshoe in the interior. And then otherwise it's polypropylene honeycomb going from the face down into the handle. So, we haven't seen this from any other company. And, I was curious. I saw the specs online, curious how it played. So I asked them to send us some. They're $170 before code. You can get 10% off that, I think, with Johnkew. I did get a Q core on this, came in at 0.401, which was right in the middle of the power category. So we played with this yesterday, Eddie. Thoughts on?
Like the Friday, it feels very stiff.
Yeah.
Very firm. It's got a lot of swing weight to it, so it's a bit of a hammer.
124.26 is the swing weight.
Yeah. But that gives it, just a little bit more juice where the Friday was lacking.
That's true. I'd place a very similar play style to the Friday feel, and stiff, kind of pingy sound when you hit it. Maybe even stiffer. I imagine, I don't know. I don't know how this thing is going to break in. Is it going to be about the same as most Gen 3s with the horseshoe construction where, yes, you do get some break in. Sometimes it's bad. Sometimes it's a little more forgiving. Is it going to be amplified because now there are two horseshoes, or is it going to be more or less the same? Don't know. So only time would tell on this. They've been out long enough that I suspect that we can get on Discord and see what people are.
Did you say mid-power?
So, yeah, if you take the three categories, control, all court, power, isolate power, right in the middle of the power category.
That's about right.
Okay. I've got to overcome this hurdle of new classification schemes because I want to move away from the control, label because I don't, as we've discussed, I don't think it's really appropriate anymore because that cross-cuts different power levels now. I don't want to. I love the term all court, but I want to get to a scheme where it's like low, mid, high power. And within the high power,
got a tier 2.
It's just like you can get divided into three also, whatever you want to call it, low, high versus mid, high versus elite, something like that. But right now I feel like we're in this stage where I'm modifying my terminology, but it's confusing to people because we're like, is this low high power? Is it mid high power? And nobody knows what we're talking about. So I'll get it sorted out eventually, but for now, we're kind of struggling.
I'm thinking around the Yola area.
Yes.
For firepower.
I would agree.
Created kind of differently. This one's in that snappy, sort of instantaneous way, whereas the Yola's a little bit more that, catch and release.
Yeah, great explanation. That's exactly where I am on this. So yeah, a solid offering, decent price, If we'd have talked about these when I got them, which is like late June, early July, that $170 would have been like, yeah, this is a fantastic price, which I still think is a good price, but there are just so many amazing budget options now. You've got the Quantas and you've got the Fridays, you've got the Luz, geez. It's hard to say that $170 is now a crazy good price, which, if you want to support this brand, I think it's a good paddle. I think it's, fun to see something slightly different from Gen 3 paddles. So, yeah, thanks for sending these back.
That X-ray is interesting, though. Looks like a lot of the cells are kind of smooshed.
Yeah, a little bit of it. Now, this is like lateral. I don't think that's crushing. It's more like you see in the paddle text where, for whatever reason, you get this, what's that? Force.
Almost like a shearing.
Shear force. Well done, Eddie. You took the word out of my mouth. Okay. What do we got next?
Reload.
Okay. So we haven't talked about these in a hot minute. So we talked about the 16 millimeter version last year, and they've recently come out with a thinner 14 millimeter version. So if you remember, last year I put this paddle as the top innovation for 2025 because I do feel like this is such an amazing technology where you can replace the grit, and it's very easy to do. You got this little tab, you pull it off, you slap on a new one, and this is peel ply You know, it's your traditional peel ply, which up to very recently has been the #1 most durable grit. Now we've got, Infinigrit to contend with, and we're still testing that. And we've got some others on the way that are using, more durable grit. But I think this is a great technology. The paddles look great. And now there's a 14 millimeter option. And it's been a while since I played with these, so I almost forgot what the original played like. So $200 for this, they call it a system because it is the paddle with 2 sheets on it plus an extra 2 sheets to replace that. So that'll last, the grit's going to last you, depending on how frequently and hard you play, for months or maybe longer. 2 sheets alone, if you want to replace these after you go through the 4 sheets that it comes with, $50, so $25 per sheet. Or you can get a 6-pack for $133, which works out to $22 per sheet.
Is this the company that was pitching a subscription?
Originally, they had a subscription model. Then they moved away because of nobody wants a subscription. Not many people do. And also they have I think it's a lifetime warranty on the core, if I'm not mistaken, which is fantastic.
What is the core?
So it's a Gen 2 paddle.
Okay.
Yeah. It's polypropylene honeycomb and, edge foam, thermoformed. Let's get into how they played. So I'll jump in. You and I mentioned this, so I know that you feel the same, but it feels, I was expecting kind of a 14 millimeter Gen 2 stiff feel, and it plays much softer than I was expecting, which I think for the 16 millimeter, that was a bit of a turnoff to me because it plays so soft that I attributed that to the construction and the face sheets, like changing the feel of the paddle. But I think it works better for the 14 millimeter. And I was coming in expecting to be like, all right, the Hyperion shape, which I'm over, in a 14 millimeter Gen 2, which, feels very, year old, 2 years old. But I had fun playing with it yesterday. Honestly, I had a very biased perspective. I was like, these these couple of games are going to be sad times for me. But I ended up enjoying it. And it was, partly because I feel like the softness you get with the face sheets being applied translates well to the 14 millimeter because it mitigates some of the stiffness that traditional 14 millimeters paddles have. And I kind of liked the ability to play with an all-court paddle. This is squarely all-court, and swing through the ball without fear of it flying 10 feet out. We've been playing with so many power paddles lately, and they have all these perks. And yes, you do get more control now with the full foams, but there's still an issue. There's still a bit of a trade-off. And this one, you just, my drops were on point, my drives were on point, the putaways weren't, going to kill anybody, but you put it in the right spot, it's going to be hard to get to. So I kind of had fun playing with this yesterday.
It is a lot of fun. It's a very intuitive paddle. Mm-hmm. With a lot of these power paddles, you really got to put your thinking cap on and think, how much effort do I want to put into this?
Right.
Not with this paddle. Just swing away. It's a good time.
Yeah.
The sweet spot could be better. I'd love to see an updated core on this paddle just to bring out what we're seeing here in modern paddles. But I think the technology is really cool. This paddle in particular, it's on the soft side, but I think for the right person, that could be a real boon.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this paddle. And if you are, if you're concerned about the durability of your grit and you want to keep your paddle for a longer time and have this capability of replacing the grip, I think this is a very, very solid option. By the way, the swing weight on this stock is 121.72. Which that's improved partly because of the thinness of this, but I remember the original 16 millimeters, they suffered from a bit of heavy swing weight. I would say this is still on the heavy end. Something's got to give on this construction because it's very innovative and fantastic, but this is not a normal part of the layup. This I don't know if it's fiberglass or whatever this is. So normally you get, for a thermoform paddle, you get the core, you get edge foam placed around it in a mold, and then you have face sheets laid up that goes directly over the polypropylene. There's like a adhesive layer between the two.
Right.
So this stiff layer that the sheets adhere to is something in addition to what the traditional thermoforming and most of other paddles are made out of. So that's going to add a little bit of weight and change the performance a little bit. But I think they did a great job considering they have to make that adjustment. And yeah, I think there's a place for this in the market. I don't think that they've gotten enough attention. I think it's a fantastic option to have. So I'm glad to see it on the market. And yeah, I think the 14, I would prefer this over the 16.
Given that the face sheets are really to kind of preserve the spin that people are hoping to keep out of a new paddle, what do you feel about the spin of this paddle?
Spin's great. Yeah, I mean, it's what you would expect a peel ply paddle to get. I think my spin numbers came in at like 2,100 and something and some change, which is right at the median of where most peel ply paddles are. And they are USAP approved.
That was my next question.
Yes. So that's a great option to have for something with replaceable faces. I got a Q core on it of 0.375. I'll flash the chart up here to give you an idea of where that falls. And that falls right in the middle of what I've newly named mid-power, which is basically all court. So
be interesting to see how this plays out with a modern Gen 4 core.
Yeah.
If that's something they're working on, I don't know.
It is.
Okay.
And I think I can spill the beans on that. So Nick, the owner, said he's doing a expanded polypropylene full foam. I think probably floating core. I think he's mentioned dual density. He's also, I don't know, I think I can mention this, but he's got some things to give this Gen 2 more power in terms of the... I don't know if I should mention it. So he's working on some juicier ones and some more modern feeling full foam ones. Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Want to talk about some balls, John?
Do we have time?
We'll make time.
Okay. All right. After a long break where we keep putting this into the show notes and we keep not having time to cover it, I want to cover the ball analysis. So I took the Lifetime ball, the Vulcan VPRO Flight, and the Franklin X40 and compared them with the ball cannon by shooting it at 50 miles an hour over and over at a stationary paddle to see what the ball looks like over its lifetime of use, or at least the early stages of what most people consider the lifetime of a ball. Now, if you are a subscriber to the newsletter, you've seen this. I put this out about 3 weeks ago. If you're not subscribed and you do enjoy this kind of stuff, definitely sign up. You can go. I'll put a link in the description. You can go to the Johnkew Pickleball.com website and sign up there also. But let's look at the chart here. So the y-axis, the vertical axis, is the outbound velocity in miles per hour of the ball being shot at 50 miles an hour inbound, right? And then the horizontal x-axis is the number of ball strikes. So it starts at 0 to 50, and we go all the way up to 500 hits for two of these balls. Now, the Vulcan ball did crack, so I had to just discard it right around 250 hits. So we don't have a lot of data on this. But what you can see right away is this break-in of this known break-in that's being talked about a lot of the Lifetime ball. Another thing that sticks out right away is the Lifetime is much more powerful and lively of a ball than both of the other two. So it starts Lifetime being the most powerful, Vulcan right in the middle, and the Franklin X40 at the bottom, which is exactly the way these things play on the court. Most people would agree. This is their impression of the balls. So you can see starting at 0 hits up to 50 hits, there's quite a significant break-in that continues for the Lifetime ball up to about 100 hits. Now, on the court, I'd say this will translate according to, depending on your play style and how hard you hit the ball, anywhere from, 30 minutes to a couple of hours. So probably 2 games for like really heavy hitters up to, 6-8 games for moderate to low heavy hitters. But yeah, and after that, it stabilizes more or less. Now you can see this dotted line going down the center is the end of day 1, and it starts back on day 2. So this is a 2-day affair. Interesting thing with the Lifetime ball, and I feel like it was going to be the same for the Vulcan before it cracked and had to be discarded. But you can see that it stabilizes after the break-in on day 1, and then you get another kind of drop at the end of day 1. And I think what you're seeing here is that the ball starts fatiguing after continual use. So they're being shot over and over and over again. And then it kind of sitting overnight, whatever's happening with that fatigue corrects itself and then it stabilizes in a more consistent manner the following day. So, this is more of a ball cannon issue and not so much, something we should be concerned about too much on the courts. Although if you're playing for 4+ hours, you might want to consider switching up the ball. It might start behaving a little bit more sporadically. Something I've noticed here with the Vulcan ball, now I want to retest this because I've never noticed any break-in with a Vulcan ball before, but there's quite a clear drop and then kind of a rebound a little bit with the Vulcan ball. Now, that might be, for whatever reason, maybe there's a micro crack in this Vulcan ball that I didn't see. These were all brand new when I started this experiment, but I feel like, yes, Vulcan balls do break. I wouldn't say they're the worst. They have the worst track record with breakage. I would say they go out of round much more frequently than other balls, but I haven't seen too many break. So I think this was more of a one-off situation. I do want to retest the Vulcan ball to see if we get a more stable and predictable outcome with it. And then you've got the Steady Eddie Franklin X40 ball at the bottom. No break-in. You do see, in general, it starts dropping off. You see that same thing where it gets a little fatigued at the end of the day and then it wakes up feeling fresh in the morning. Yep. And it needs to get that same trajectory. So the point of all this is that the lifetime ball has a break-in. In terms of court play, it's going to be anywhere from 1 to a few hours, and then it stabilizes. The Franklin does not have that break-in. It's pretty stable out of the box. Lifetime's more powerful. Franklin's on the low end of power. But both of these, if you look at the trajectory from the beginning to the end, there's a slow decline in outbound velocity. So they become less and less springy the longer you play with them. You can see from the scatter plot, I did a scatter plot of the lifetime ball and did a R-squared analysis for just the day 1 balls and the same R-squared analysis for the day 2 balls. And you can see both show a general decrease through time, but there's a drop between day 1 and day 2, which verifies that trend we're seeing of just overall use decreases the outbound velocity of the ball. So the longer you use them, the less powerful they will become.
John, are you hitting this against the paddle?
Against the paddle,
okay.
Right. A clamped paddle. So I think it's interesting stuff, and it's good to see finally some kind of objective, quantifiable data showing power trends among the 3 most commonly used balls now, as well as break-in trends, which verifies A, that the lifetime ball breaks in, and B, it does stabilize, but all balls are going to show like a gradual decline in performance after hours and hours of use.
But then a kind of a steady state.
Yeah.
Following that.
The lifetime balls are very durable and they get cracked. I feel like they crack less than even the Franklins, which, Franklins do crack, especially in cold weather. One of the things is we don't know how the lifetime ball plays in the winter, So we'll find out. Playing in cold weather, is it going to increase the likelihood of that breakage along the seam of the ball that we've seen, happen? Or is it going to make it extremely more powerful and poppy? I think some people have played with it in the winter. It's been around since winter. I think it's when it launched. So some people know. I don't have the experience yet to say for sure. All right. In terms of what does this mean? Should I be switching out balls, after X amount of time playing with them? That's entirely up to the user, I think. The lifetime ball has the capacity to be played for months, if you wanted to. I do feel like eventually that power level is going to decrease to an extent where, you're going to want a fresh ball. And, a lot of people don't like the way they play brand new, and there's tournament implications too. Like these are now the official PPA. So we're going to be playing with these in PPA tournaments as amateurs too. I think I would rather play with a used ball if given the option, because you're going to know it's going to be a little more predictable. It's not going to be changing over the course of a few games. So if, usually they give you an option. I think I would rather play with the used ball because the new ones are very, very springy and lively, But for some people, if you're playing singles, then maybe that's in your wheelhouse. Not for me. I do think that I love the lifetime ball after it's broken in so far.
Yeah.
You know.
And at least in 500 shots, it hasn't gotten to the level of a Franklin ball in terms of its softness, right? Or its rebound.
Exactly. I do want to experiment like with pre-breaking it in. I think sticking it in the dryer on like fluff cycle for an hour or so, sticking like 100 balls in there.
Haven't you tormented your family enough?
The ball cannon's going off, the dryer's clanking around. I think that might be a way to break them in.
What do you think about spin, John, over the course of a ball? I would imagine that's harder to measure given, the paddle's degradation over that time as well. But
yeah, it's from my knowledge of how balls spin from my spin testing. When they're brand new and they're slick surfaces, they don't spin as well as when they're slightly roughed up. Mm-hmm. So there's that. But after that, I've not noticed any kind of degradation or increase in spin as it gets more roughed up, and they seem to just behave the same spin wise.
Okay,
and not even much between temperatures. Like I used to think that colder temperatures actually increase the spin because the ball gets a little stiffer. I've yet to be able to quantify that.
I would think the opposite.
Yeah, where it kind of grips and it's softer and you get more grip.
Right.
That was just something I noticed on some of when it was colder. I was expecting the opposite too, and when it's colder, I was getting like 2,300 RPM on paddles that I got 2,200 on before. But that again is just with radar gun and serves. It warrants more of an objective test, like shooting a ball at a paddle at an angle and measuring with a high-speed camera. So I don't have that accuracy just yet, so I can't say for sure. What was I going to say? Oh, I do think that the lifetime ball, given its smaller holes, we talked about this a few episodes ago, like what are the benefits and drawbacks to 48 holes versus 40 holes, right? So the lifetime ball is still not USAP approved because USAP has a maximum number of holes of 40, whereas the lifetime balls are 48. I do think that, some of the perks to having more holes are the more consistent bounce. You're hitting when the holes are bigger, when it hits on the hole versus off the hole, it's more of a profound difference. Smaller kind of corrects, averages out some of those differences. I think they're probably a little more durable, the balls with more holes, but you do get a decrease in dip, I feel like, even given the same amount of spin. And a lot of people have been saying the lifetime ball doesn't get as good of spin as the Vulcan. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's the case. In fact, judging from my spin tests, that's not the case. They get the same amount of spin. But the lifetime ball, I feel like, because there are more holes and the holes are smaller, doesn't get the aerodynamic grip that the Franklin X40 does, or other comparable balls with bigger holes. So those with bigger holes dip harder than the lifetime ball with smaller holes does. That's just something I'm noticing on the court. You get plenty of spin on the lifetime, but it's harder to dip it, harder to shape it. Yeah.
Fascinating.
All right. Gear of the week, Eddie.
What do you got?
We got some pickle skins. So these are coming out Thursday. And so you can get a 2-pack and what are these? 5 sets. A 2-pack and a 10-pack, right? And these are basically just oval-shaped, sticky pieces of texture you can stick on your paddle to either refurbish the spin of used paddles or to preserve the spin on new paddles. Now, you and I both felt these, and I've been talking with PIKKL. They've been working on this for a good while now. They don't feel gritty at all. They feel kind of smoothish. And initially, I was just like, a couple of drawbacks to these right out the box. They're not USAP or UPAA approved yet for tournament play, even at amateur level. So they're considered a removable part, so you can't play with it as an amateur at USAP events. I have been talking with PIKKL, and USAP is moving to a direct spin test. And, they have been talking about this for over a year now. I did hear about that they actually do have the setup now, and they're testing the setup. So the camera, high-speed camera, ball cannon, shooting at an angled paddle, et cetera. So I know it's in the works. PIKKL thinks they will have that in place in Q1 of 2026. We'll see. But regardless, the point of that is that when that happens, they're going to consider approving these if they fall within the allowable RPM limit direct spin. So these may be approved for tournament play. So back to the original thought, I was like, originally I felt how smooth it was, and I knew it wasn't USAP approved, and I was very skeptical on whether or not these would be something that people would want to play with. However, after testing them on the paddles, I still think there are some drawbacks. Number one, USAP not approved, so you can't play with them in tournaments. But there's many good things about these, which I think will be appealing to a lot of people. First of all, they rip spin.
They work. I mean, there's no denying that.
Yeah. I've got a chart in here. So I compared. I also wanted to see what the swing weight difference is for two of these on a paddle and the twist weight adjustments. So we're going to look at all the stats, all the metrics of the Thrive Fury when it was brand new out of the box, with and without these skins, and also a used Yola Perseus 4. I borrowed this from the used Perseus from a friend. First of all, let's look at the stock weight. So the stock Thrive Fury was 8.1 ounces, and the stock Perseus 4 was 7.8 ounces. Adding skins to both sides, so one of these patches on both sides, raised the static weight by 0.3 of an ounce, basically, on both of these, just under 0.3 of an ounce. Now, the stock swing weight, this is going to be the big consideration for most people, because these do add swing weight. So stock swing weight for the Thrive Fury new is 116, bumped up to 120 with skins. The stock swing weight of the Yola Perseus 4, 118, and it bumped it up to 124. So we've got a range of like 4 to 5 swing weights. Imagine it's going to average out to 5. Now, it's clearly going to also depend on where you stick where you stick it. So on elongated pedals, you've got a lot more longitudinal difference. You can stick it down at the bottom. That's going to mitigate the increased swing weight, or you can stick it up toward the top, and that's going to be the max. What I typically do is put it about an inch below. That's where I like to put it on an elongated, on any paddle, basically, an inch below the top. By the way, these go on and come off very easily, and I've been able to apply it multiple times, and it still sticks. I've yet to see one fall off a paddle. That's something I do want to test. How many times can you take it off and reapply it before the adhesive wears down? But whatever adhesive they're using is fantastic. I also want to say that I don't mind the look of them either. Like, it's a very subtle difference. I like that they went with kind of a semi-translucent gray, which over most black peel ply paddles looks just fine. Most people aren't even going to notice it. Yeah, so there's that. Anyway, adjusting it up or down will also adjust the swing weight. So about 5 points on average, putting 2 of these on each, which is no small amount. I call it a significant bump in swing weight. Twist weight is minimal, the increase in twist weight. So it ended up being the same on the Thrive Fury before and after. So 6.7 before, 6.7 after you add the skins. 5.95 on the stock Perseus 4 versus a 6.1 on the one with skins. Now, here's the interesting part. What does the spin look like on these? So the stock RPM spin on the Thrive Fury new was 2,256 RPM. Adding the skins, basically this is within the margin of error of that original spin. So 2243, which that is really, really good spin. It's not outside of the legal limit, I would say, or that doesn't give unfair advantage to people using these. It's just like using a top tier spin paddle, right? And that's exactly what it felt like on the court when we actually did get to playing with them. The used Yola Perseus 4, big drop in spin from stock, so down to 1,500. I think he used this for 2 months, he said. 1,500 RPM, 1,557. And with skins bumped it up to the 2,200 range, so 21,667. So that's a big benefit to these is if you're
700 RPM.
Yeah, it just bring it up to an elite spin paddle again. So, what are your thoughts before I go on, Eddie?
Everyone loves spin. They want to keep it, but man, that swing weight is really difficult to. I mean, if you have a paddle that's already in the high teens, let's say, and it's bumping that up to the mid 120s, you've got now a paddle that's really difficult to manage.
Yeah. if you're very sensitive to swing weight, then consider these carefully for sure, especially on an elongated paddle.
Yep.
Where I think they benefit, or I think they're most appropriate for use, would be a wide body paddle. And in fact, I played with the Friday paddle yesterday, stuck these on, and actually improved the performance of it. Now, I will say, caveat here is that this is not the ideal weight placement. So you can see that you're adding weight right to the center of the paddle. What you typically want to do is add weight as far away from the center line of the paddle as possible, because gives you the maximum benefits for twist weight. And that increases the width of the sweet spot. So putting weight right in the center of the paddle, not ideal. However, I feel like with wide bodies, they start with such a low swing weight, you've got room there, and it gave it a little more plow through, a little more plushness, like any weight anywhere on the paddle will do. But it also didn't feel too heavy. So I put this on the fever yesterday. I put it on the Selkirk elongated boomstick, which is already kind of maxed out weight-wise. Definitely that thing turned into a tank, it bumped it up to like 126 swing weight or something,
That was so fun to use, though.
Singles, that's a great singles paddle, right?
It's amazing how fun that is. If you can just make those mental adjustments to deal with the swing weight, just have a little bit more time on your drives and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You can rip them, man.
Oh, dude. Yeah, that weighted up Selkirk was a cannon.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I actually feel like this enhanced the performance. Now, clearly, taking these off and adding 3 grams on the edges would be a way to further enhance it.
Oh, my goodness.
So 2 uses for these, I feel like. A, you buy a new paddle, you don't want to lose the grit, the original texture. Slap these on, especially on a wide body. You will adapt to the weight, and then when you play with it at a tournament, take these off. You can stick them back onto the backing that they come on to preserve them. You've got fresh peel ply, and to compensate for the difference in weight, add 3 grams of lead or tungsten on each side, and you're actually going to get slightly improved performance at that point for the tournament, more or less the same overall weight and swing weight. And then, and that way you're using these, preserving your original paddle's texture, and you can prolong the life of your paddle to a large extent. The other option is you've got a paddle, for example, this guy who plays with the Perseus 4, he's got 3 used ones that he doesn't like to play with anymore because the spin's not there, and they change the performance a little bit. But if it's entirely the spin, you can just refurbish the spin on your paddle like that with these. They're also very affordable. So we've got, let's see, $20 for the 2-pack. So that would be $10 per, more affordable. I'd say more affordable definitely than the reloads. Now we'll compare them in a second more directly. $70 for a 10-pack. So that's $7 per sheet versus $22 for the reload sheets.
I'd like to try these on the Rhombus, because those are so lightweight to begin with. The swing weight's down in the low 100s, right? Just start with these to begin with.
Yeah, for sure.
And that could be fun.
Yeah. So, there's some caveats here. Not ideal weight placement on the paddle. It does increase the swing weight by about 5 points. Going into it, knowing all that, I do feel like these are going to be a really valuable option for people who are more budget-minded and don't like to switch their paddles all the time. And I had to kind of reorient myself. Part of my original skepticism was like, these, if they didn't spend the greatest and they added swing weight, then forget about it.
Yeah.
But you and I are privileged in the sense that we get new paddles basically whenever we want. Most of the people out there buying these paddles, it's a significant chunk of change, and to have to replace a paddle because of the grit is not fun. So
there is an additional mental adjustment you have to make outside of the weight change and setup and that kind of thing. And that is you start with a paddle like this, and you think, okay, this is probably what in your mind you think of the sweet spot of a wide body like this.
Yeah.
And by adding the sticker here, your mind thinks, okay, well now my sweet spot is something like that.
Right.
And you have to be even more exact with your paddle placement. It's not an actual mental. It's not an actual performance thing, but it is a mental thing.
Yeah.
And once you're over that, I think you're good. But there is that initial like, okay, now I got to be really tight on my swings.
Yeah. Just consider it a sweet spot map.
Exactly.
Yeah, $20 for a 2-pack, $70 for a 10-pack, 20% off with code. So
give it a try at least.
After that, they're very, very affordable. And this is not a knock on Reload, but very much cheaper than Reload. This is a system. You're not supposed to use these on other paddles, and I wouldn't recommend it. This is peel ply. This is grit. Another unknown about these, I don't know how durable they are. They are made in the U.S., but out of the box, they get great spin. I'll continue testing the durability of them. I do think they're a very good option for people who are more price conscious and need to preserve the spin on their paddle. You got to run, Eddie.
John, I think that's a wrap for this week.
All right. We've got somebody here with a full-time job. I appreciate you stopping in, Eddie, and have a good one.
Good fun. Thanks.